Hello, and welcome back to Tech Ambrosia. If you're looking for the printing instructions for these models, please go to the timestamp shown below, or stick around to hear the whole story. Today, I'm releasing 2 sets of 3D prints for your computer organization needs. The first I teased in my Socket A build-off retrospective, which is available up here. The second I teased on my Twitter, as well as the PixelPipes Discord server. Links to both of those in the description. I have to admit, I'm pretty proud of these designs. They're going to solve some serious problems that I've been having lately when it comes to keeping my ever-growing collection organized. And hopefully, they can solve similar problems for you as well. So, what are they exactly? Well, 2 families of prints today: vertical test benches and GPU storage stands. Let's start with the vertical test benches. While I was testing my Socket A system last month, I was frustrated by how much desk space the build was taking up, and how flimsy it was every time I had to swap a graphics card or disconnect a connector. So I hopped online and started searching for a micro ATX sized test bench I could 3D print. I learned 2 things on that search that day. 1, no one seems to know what micro ATX means anymore. I found a frustratingly large number of these things listed as compatible with micro ATX motherboards, but would never ever fit anything larger than a mini ITX board. And 2, the quality control and testing that goes into these prints can be highly variable. I don't want to turn this video into a rant, but suffice to say, the print I tried to use for that build frustrated me enough with poor fitment issues and design oversights that I built my own case. And that's why we're here today, so let's talk about the test benches and why they look the way they do and what features I've designed into them. I'll start out with the design that basically replaced the prototype seen in my Socket A video. I'm calling this the Mini ITX test bench. The design largely mimics the original prototype, but I've strengthened all areas of the print. It's comprised of a core backplane with 4 mounting holes on it, a rear platform that accommodates either a 150 or 170mm ATX power supply depending on the version you print, and a support arm on the front that holds the primary expansion card, which is usually a GPU, as well as an optional 120mm fan. That fan mount, and the whole support arm in general, is quite rigid and has no problem holding a 120mm AIO, and even my 780 Ti is no match for it. I did some testing with my FireGL V7700, a card that will quite happily pull temperatures up to about 90 degrees Celsius, and ran Skyrim on an idle loop with a 90-watt CPU for 6 hours straight, and the case didn't display any signs of warping or even softening at all. Now, the reason I'm calling this the Mini ITX version, despite clearly using it with micro ATX boards here, is this. During my testing with other motherboards, I found that newer, higher performance boards tend to omit expansion slot number 1, instead placing the primary graphics card slot in position 2, or sometimes even position 3. To that end, I also designed a micro ATX version of the print, which takes advantage of the standardized spacing between slots and extends the GPU support arm up 20mm to hold a card in expansion slot 2, instead of slot 1. If you want maximum flexibility and minimum print time, you can use the smaller case and one of the 3 sizes of GPU arm spacers I've included, which slide onto the GPU support arm and support a GPU in slot 2, 3, or 4. Similarly, I've included 4 sizes of expansion card spacers, which are most useful when building a more retro system that might need a sound card or a network card or a Super I/O card in addition to the primary graphics adapter. These clip onto the I/O bracket of a card and provide a convenient shelf for the card above to rest on. These come in 60, 40, and 20mm sizes, as well as a 0mm, really 1mm, version for cards that need to rest directly beside other cards. Now, if you paid attention during the intro, you know that there's a 3rd size of test bench I'm releasing today, and this one is probably the one I'm the most proud of. The last test bench size is Baby AT. A quick history lesson here if you're lost when I say Baby AT. In the PC building world nowadays, we have ATX motherboards. Broadly speaking, ATX is a size designation within a family of motherboard and case specifications that share a lot of mounting locations for both the board itself, as well as expansion cards and I/O. Before ATX, though, motherboards were pretty much designed around the floor plan of the IBM PC-AT, introduced in 1984. The PC-AT was a big old chunker of a machine, just an absolute unit of a desktop PC, and a full AT motherboard ran almost the entire length of that case, right under the power supply, right under the drive bays. It was enormous. Baby AT cut that size in just about half, basically starting the motherboard where the power supply ended. That form factor, Baby AT, became basically the de facto standard for motherboards for over a decade. So 286s, 386s, 486s, early Pentiums, heck, my parents' K62 that they bought in late '98 used a Baby AT motherboard. This size of board stuck around for a long time. If you have any of this hardware, you know how difficult it is to track down a case for these things nowadays. And that is a problem I'm looking to solve with this Baby AT size test bench. There are two sizes of test bench. A normal sized one for AT power supplies that are within the realm of ATX power supply sized, and a shorty version for half-height power supplies like mine here. This is a power supply I rescued from a dead 386 luggable. The expansion slot spacers and GPU risers both work with this design as well, so there's some additional flexibility there if your particular motherboard isn't quite the same shape as mine. This is the design I'd like to ask the community to test the most. I just don't have that much AT hardware to test it with. If you've printed it and tried it with your own AT era hardware, please leave a comment down below or tag me on my Twitter. Okay, that's the vertical test benches. The other family of 3D prints I'm launching today are GPU storage stands. I don't know about you, but I am drowning in GPUs. I really appreciate all the kind donations to the channel, but I am rapidly running out of space to store them all. In what I would mostly consider an act of personal desperation, I designed these GPU storage stands to try and fit all of my GPUs on my shelves in some sort of halfway sane manner. My design goals for these were pretty simple. I wanted to store GPUs and other expansion cards in as high density as possible, while also keeping them safe from potentially scraping off surface mount components from their PCBs, from being stored too tightly. I think I've accomplished that with this design, and I think it's useful enough that folks out there like you might want to have a go at it, so here they are. There are 3 versions of the stand: a PCI Express version in 1, 2, and 3 slot sizes, a combined AGP and PCI version, also available in 1 and 2 slot sizes, and finally, an ISA slot version. I only made a single slot size for ISA, but I'm sure that now that I've released it, I'm going to have at least 25 people in my comments telling me that they need a 2-slot version for their obscure VLB video capture card or something. These are pretty self-explanatory. Slot the card into the holder, snug the holder's feet up against the card's I/O shield, and you're ready to go. That snugging process is actually really important because it's actually the card's I/O shield that provides the lion's share of the design's rigidity and bears most of the card's weight. Precision fit is the name of the game here, and that means your printer settings need to enable that required level of precision. This dovetails quite nicely into the next section, which is print settings. For both of these model families, I recommend printing at 0.25mm layer height. Mostly, that's to take advantage of the 1/4mm precision in the z-axis. That's important for when you're meshing prints like this with objects in the real world. The test benches are designed to print with a minimum amount of support, assuming you're familiar with getting your printer to bridge long gaps. If this is your first time printing something with a 100mm gap in it, just turn on supports and enjoy using the test bench when it finishes. You'll thank me later. If you're looking for a challenge, though, the only part that needs support during printing is the near horizontal overhang at the end of the GPU support arm. If you turn on normal supports, not tree supports, in Cura and set it to generate support only from the build plate, you'll see that's the only part of the print that gets support added. If you do want to try this, I recommend adding a couple of support blockers set up as cutting meshes underneath those bridges. Set the overlap settings to something like 12 walls and 0% infill, and your printer should make its best attempt at bridging those gaps. There is nothing like watching a printer print in the middle of thin air. For the GPU stands, I've been printing these laying down flat, with tree supports to get this upper arm up here. If you're looking at this model and thinking, Amber, why on earth don't you just print it facing this direction? Well, that's the end goal, but at the moment, the way I have the faces set up in the model, Kura kind of freaks out about it and won't lay it on the bed correctly. You can certainly try it. I'd recommend adding a brim to help with adhesion, but for the moment I've just been printing these with supports in this orientation. I may have this fixed by the time this video goes live, or shortly thereafter, so you might just be able to just throw these on your build plate and go, no supports needed. That's the end goal for these, and I'm working on it. If you print any of these models out and use them, please let me know how it goes, either in the comments below or over on my Twitter. If these seem useful to you, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on the video. It helps get this video out into the YouTube ocean. If you want to see more stuff like this from me, go ahead and click that subscribe button. You'll get my videos delivered in your inbox in no time. Until next time, this has been Tech Ambrosia's Alchemy. My name is Amber. Have a great night. There's more to that sentence than just and why they look the way they do. Higher performance boards tend to omit. It's a very different word. That's a very different word. Thing hurts so much to hold on to. My worst nightmare. I'm just like talking away and like there's something crawling out of the window behind me. God, that's how I die.